Cyborg USA, Cyborg USA. They got the skills to pay the bills and help the president along the way. Cyborg USA, Cyborg USA. They got street smarts and lots of parts, and they made it robotic ways. They all died in a train crash, and their bodies were torn apart. Resurrected by Hunter Rick. Now they are a brand new start. Yeah, Cyborg USA. Cyborg USA. They got the skills to pay the bills. They do our will designed to kill. And they made it good. USA, USA,
USA, USA. Quick, friends, check your pulse. Because if the Cyborg USA theme song didn't get your ticker up to 120 BPMs, you might need medical attention. But don't go yet, because we've got all the medicine you need here on the Splendopia Hour, live. The best showcase of independent comic book projects out there in TV land today. Two big guests. First up, we're going to be speaking with Joshua Plack, who's going to tell us all about EUDAIMONIA number 2. Sorry, Joshua. He'll get us on that. And then we'll talk to Michael Odin from ELYSIAN Fields. 2 great projects, 1 big hour. Me, I'm your friend with benefits, Anton Belvedere. But let's send it over to the host of our show, a guy whose stated goal in life is to hunt down and bring to you the very best in the independent comic book scene. Ladies, check your pulse again, because it's about to go racing. Here he is, Robert C. Cacy. Bring him out.
Hey, what's up? What's up, Anton? Hey, welcome. That was a great intro once again. Thank you for that.
EUDAIMONIA.
Yeah, I think you got it now. I think that's right. So these are some great looking comic books we got today. It's good to see you again. I'm glad to be back with you.
See you.
Yeah, it's nice to be back. How are you handling the lockdown?
You know, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. I'm ready to get out, get some sun. Pasting away. I guess we can get outside for sun, but you have to do it alone. And what's the fun in that?
Yeah.
I don't want to suntan alone.
Are you? All right.
I mean, is that fair?
Good, that's not fair. I mean, you know, I got the sun on me, you know, pretty much all day. So.
Well, it's always beautiful outside the Splendopia studios.
Well, the Splendopia studios are doing great. The water is really high. And as soon as this episode is over, I am going to jump in the kayak. I may actually just like jump in the kayak. Just like at the very end, I mean, you guys can watch me jump in the kayak.
Oh, that'll be wonderful.
Very excited to hear kayak.
Watch you sail away.
Yeah. Anyway, but in the meantime,
will you take some comic books out there with you?
No, I like to keep them mint. Let's bring in our first guest.
All right, we're speaking with Joshua Plack first. Let's bring him in. A great looking comic book, EUDAIMONIA number 2. He'll tell us about it, and number 1. Welcome back, Joshua.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, man? So, we were on a stream when I was pitching for your first comic, and I bought it, and it's and then my house.
Robbie, you're lagging a little bit.
Thank God it's not me.
No, it's not you. You're lagging a little bit, Robert. Robbie, you think? I think
that's a really good question.
It was going to be a great question. I know he was going to ask you. He was going to reminisce about how he was on your stream when he was pitching the Cyborg USA comic book.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and he was really appreciative of that and wanted to try and pay back the favor.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember that was like my first time. That was around my first time doing any streams of any nature, so it was all foreign to me, and it still kind of is. But yeah, those are the good old days of number 1, my first campaign.
Mine too. Am I back?
You're back.
Am I back? Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. I'm sorry, guys. I got confused. Yeah. Well, what I was also saying is that I got the book, but I had to leave my apartment in New York. Like when the plague started, I didn't get a chance to read it. But I'm excited to get the second book and then read them together when I get back, when I'm reunited in those copies. So, you know, why don't you tell us about yourself a little bit? Because we just like to know about like who the creator is and like, you know, what got you into comics.
I gotcha. So I'm a pretty recent college graduate. Recently just completed my bachelor's in writing and English literature, And as I was kind of going through that kind of academic journey, a lot of the things that I were drawn to were, what's that?
Is that at Oregon? You're in Eugene, I see, right?
Yeah, at Oregon. When you study literature, and you study history, you study philosophy, you tend to be drawn to these little pockets, these little areas, and they become like the things that draw you in and fascinate you. And for me, that was, classic Western philosophy. And in terms of history and literature, a lot of it revolved around like World War I.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I kind of came out of the gate and started creating, those were the forces that kind of fed my creativity. And I was really drawn into a lot of the styles that these soldiers in World War I were themselves using. And then, of course, the topic itself is, great ground to kind of explore, the nature of a lot of subjects like war and trauma and all these different things, and how they kind of shape the person that emerged from what I consider to be, the most historic, the most horrific series of battles, in modern history. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is there any chance that you watched Downton Abbey? Did you watch Downton Abbey?
I do not, but I do watch a fair amount of British television.
I mean, it's a
great show.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. I wouldn't recommend the movie, but they spend a significant amount of time like dealing with World War I, and I think it's in a really interesting way, because you're used to like hearing about the British experience in World War II, so to hear it, I don't know, the way it's portrayed in Downton Abbey, I think is like is very admirable and interesting. It's probably the best arc of that series. Anyway.
Yeah. So when I was going to school, I was doing just ridiculous things like reading old psychological medical journals and all of the accounts I could from the soldiers in the front lines, and then even the effect that had on people at home. So the first book in the series centered largely around a soldier, an American soldier who went over at the age of 15, and then his experiences coming back. Eudaimonia number 2 is telling the story of the woman that he encounters, when he's fresh from the battlefield, and then a German soldier. So you have an American soldier, a German soldier, and a French girl. And what it does is basically it provides more context for the first story. So there's a lot of things that were kind of left open and things that didn't really make sense. But, like with anything, there are two sides to the story. There's a story to tell in Eudaimonia number 2, but there's also how those events affect what we saw in the first book.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've been saying is basically the events of number 2 are going to change everything that people saw in the first book. So by providing that additional context, that additional story.
I just brought up the page here. Why don't we watch the video?
Is the cover on the left is number 1, or the number 1 on the left and then number 2 on the right?
Number 1 is on the left, number 2 is on the right.
Okay.
All right. Let me see if I can get it going.
Very, very poignant. Can you pop it to full screen, Rob?
Yeah, I'm going.
I know. That's it. We're just testing your technical skills. That's why I said that.
If you can hear it, it's great.
Near the French-German border, the dawn of World War I brings horrors and heartache that stretch far across the landscape. Most folks are trying to just make sense of it all, find meaning, if that's even possible. Some find it for themselves. A rare few craft it for others. It's beautiful. It got me on Joshua. I love the inspiration. All Quiet on the Western Front is, of course, a legendary book, and you could kind of sense that inspiration just from the art, even before I saw that in the text on the page. That you say that is one of your inspirations, so it really comes through.
Yeah, no doubt. That was
Sorry,
definitely
yeah.
the book that kind of sent me down this kind of rabbit hole.
Mhm.
And what I really enjoyed about it was how it was basically hearing about the war kind of divorced from the global perspective, because
Right.
that tends to be how we learn about history, is how it kind of shaped the globe. But beneath
Mhm.
that is, you know, kind of surreal story for the young men that actually go and fight.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's always, war is always talked about or discussed at the macro level. It's
Right.
Germany versus America, right? And it's not Max versus Bill, right? And
Yeah.
that's really what it came down to, right?
Well, there are all these like abstract like moments of horror that are like
Mhm.
burned into people's like, you know, lives, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. The artwork is beautiful. Really nice. Not a lot of funny moments in this book. I'm gonna guess.
No, that'll come later down the road.
That comes,
What do we-
number three. Number three.
What are we talking about? What are we talking about? The packages. So I know what I'm gonna do. I got the first book, so I'm gonna get the second book. But you can still get the first book in a bundle over here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that was
How
the one
much?
thing that was like probably the best idea I had, or probably not. It's probably not my own idea, but what I did is, you know, I miss the idea of first editions. You know, like something
Yeah.
that actually distinguishes a book from any other book. And so what I did was, for the first book, I think on the page, I think I have like 14 first editions of EUDAIMONIA number 1 left, and I basically just took the little first, what was it? The little first edition from Pokemon cards that they had. It was like a little gold foil thing, and I just kind of borrowed that stencil and changed it up a little bit and kind of added it to the cover. So if you see in the picture there, the number one and number 2, it says the gold first edition is on number 2, but the number 1 has the silver edition, the second edition. So that way, it's like, you know, exactly when this was printed. You know, it's the first edition. It's something that only you and whoever gets in on this campaign is going to have.
It's fantastic.
So, yeah, here's the second one that I'm going to be backing soon. Here's the first edition.
There you go. There's first
The
edition.
last of with them signed and marked in gold. And then line art. So you have a line art tier here as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to be throwing up a couple pages like every 5 days or so.
Okay.
People want them. Some people are more attached to certain pages than others. And the cover is probably going to be like way later in the campaign.
I think that's awesome. So, you know, it's a great way to raise money. And, I wish we could have done more with that. We had, so like on Cyborg USA, my artist was like all digital. So there's basically like no line art to sell or to hold on to. But I think that's awesome.
Yeah, my artist is down in Argentina, so shipping is $70. And so I was like, I cannot bring myself to charge anybody $70. So I figured, to be fair, I would make it $35, and I'll eat that cost. Like I'll pay the rest.
Have you?
If somebody really wants that page enough, they shouldn't have to pay $70 for shipping. So I'm going to take that on myself.
So Pablo is also in Argentina. Have you shipped anything to Argentina like lately?
No, I haven't.
Because I can't get I was trying to send him books of Cyborg USA like comps, and I couldn't get him through. So
yeah, no, I talked to my artists, and they're basically on international shipping lockdown, from what I understand, for now. So the hope is once that clears up, we can get it cleared up.
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't have trouble with any other places other than that. All right, well, I think that's great, man. That's really interesting. I want to make sure that we bring in our second guest, but
I want a question.
Oh,
though.
you have a question? You have one question?
I do. I have a question for Joshua, because I just reading through the page. I want to hear more about the question on your frequently asked questions is, are you #ComicsGate? Yes, I am. What does that mean? What does it mean that you are ComicsGate?
So Anton, do you know anything about ComicsGate?
No, that's why I'm asking.
All these comic books are ComicsGate.
Okay.
I should answer for this. Or I guess I don't know. You can answer that too if you want. It's like a bigger question.
I mean, we might have different answers. So
yeah, I think there are.
Sure.
I think there are a lot of different answers. I think. All right, go ahead and answer, and I'll add more context because I haven't talked to Anton about.
I'm sorry I
Comicsgate.
threw a wrench into the show.
No,
you're fine.
No, it's hilarious because like all these shows are about promoting Comicsgate comic books.
Yeah,
and you don't even know what Comicsgate is or have any opinion about it.
It's not like a label. You aren't a label. Like it's not the Comicsgate label, right?
wait.
Edgar's got a great.
Take a moment to reflect on Edgar Charlie's. Yeah, Edgar. That's obviously true. You're obviously right, Edgar.
No, and he's 4 weeks late.
No, it's all right. It's all right. We can like build the audience slowly.
It's true.
That's true. But anyway, there'll probably be some more comments now.
I love it.
Do you want to answer that before we bring the next guest in? Answer it your way, and then we'll bring.
Okay, I would say I'm Comicsgate because I believe in meritocracy and taking care of and respecting my customers. And it's not like a dog whistle. There's nothing to it beyond that. I believe in treating my customers with a certain level of just like respect and dignity, and in a way that I don't think we're seeing in a lot of mainstream media culture right now. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So
and I believe that So
go ahead.
people would say that like politics and media is political, but the process of making those things should not be a political process. You know what I mean? Like that's
absolutely.
If that's something that people take issue with, I respect people. I respect people on both sides. I believe that. Just like, segue into my book, there are two sides to every story. And that's just the position that I take on it. Nothing more.
Absolutely. I loved you say the customer decides that identity is not an adequate substitution for story.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm
a man of few words. Any questions?
So the main thing about Comicsgate is it was basically like a hashtag that at first like people who were criticizing mainstream comic books were like labeled with. They're like, oh, this is like Comicsgate, and it came off this. Have you ever heard of Gamergate, Anton?
Yes.
So it was a way to like paint like these disgruntled like comic book fans as like Gamergate Part 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then the fans kind of like rallied behind it and were like, all right, yeah, we are Comicsgate. Yeah, this is Comicsgate. And we're going to make our own thing. And that's where a lot of these comic books are coming from. The spirit of that.
You retook over the slur.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly right.
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah. It's like the mainstream said F you to us. And this is our way of saying like, we can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
In terms of like an artistic movement, it's kind of like just punk.
It is like punk. I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
I also think of it as like French New Wave cinema. It's no, seriously, like it came out. It's like an artistic movement that came out of like criticism of mainstream like Hollywood films, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, why don't we bring in our next guy?
Hail Comicsgate.
Hail Comicsgate. There you go. You heard it here first.
Hail Comicsgate.
Hail Comicsgate.
Right here. But while we're just having too much fun, we should bring out our next guest. What do you think, Rob?
Absolutely.
This guy is going to tell us all about his project, Elysian Fields. See, this is a little Elysian Fields music. It's Michael Odin.
How's it going, guys?
There he is. Let's bring that.
Hey, Josh.
Good, man.
Looks outstanding.
Good. How are you doing?
We're doing really well. I was honestly just watching Josh's presentation on his campaign. I plan on getting behind that as soon as I'm able to, because it just looks gorgeous. And I'm a huge sucker for World War I stories. I love, like, obviously, I think everybody, especially in this country, has a very fond appreciation of World War II, because we kind of came in and were the big dogs of that. But World War I is this conflict that I feel often gets overlooked, and it's nice to start seeing it get some love in the mainstream nowadays with things like 1917, or like a few years ago, Ubisoft did a game called Valiant Hearts, which was really good.
Oh my god, that game was amazing.
It was brilliant, and I don't think I've cried that hard at the end of a game than I did at Valiant Hearts. It is fantastic.
That game is oh my gosh. Now we're going down a rabbit hole.
Honestly, like the first thing when I was looking through your stuff on your campaign is like, this looks like Valiant Hearts. I'm buying the book.
Well, you guys know what else World War I gave us? Hitler. Fucking Hitler.
Well, I mean, well, that was the whole thing. Was that World War I was a pointless pissing contest that didn't solve anything and created more problems than it fixed. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a reason why it's called the Lost Generation. It was just a complete waste. Like it was. That's honestly what it was, and you got great literature out of it, and that's about the only plus.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? So because we don't know you, I haven't met you before, and like tell us what got you into comics and what's going on.
Yeah, no, of course. This is my first book, so that's understandable.
I'm gonna pop it over on the screen. There we go.
I got into comics because I'd say probably like most people that get into comics, they grew up reading them, and my dad was military, and my mom was like, while my dad was away on like SF missions, my mom would be handling all of us at the house, and I had two older brothers, so they would be watching me, and so I would be like getting into their comic books, and they'd be having me watch things like Spider-Man the animated series, X-Men the animated series, Batman the animated series, stuff like that. And so they just kind of harbored this love of comics, and that's something that has been a constant throughout my entire life. And as I got older, this is my first creative work, but I've done a lot of freelance writing for sites like I started writing for Movie Pilot, and then they got the axe and got bought and repurposed, and then I worked for Heroic Hollywood for like 2 weeks, and we won't talk about that. And
all that does is make us want to talk about it.
Yeah, like well, I don't know anything about those places.
It's not great. Like all I can say is that it wasn't a fun experience, and it wasn't something that I'd ever put myself through again. Then I ran my own 2 blogs for a bit, and then I was reached out by a recently up and coming news site called Up Your Geek, and they're fantastic, and that's who I do a lot of writing with now. But as fun as it has been to write reviews and take a look at these greater creative projects, making my own book, making my own series, making my own thing, was always something that I wanted to do. And after a long stint of trying to pitch stuff to people and either coming really close and just missing the mark, or just getting completely stonewalled altogether, I was like, screw it, I'm going to make my own.
Cool.
So I had this concept that I had kind of been toying around with since high school. And now here we are. We have Elysian Fields issue 0. And
why don't we watch the video? See if I can get a plan here.
Hey there, welcome to the Elysian Fields crowdfunding campaign. Thanks for giving us a check out. Elysian Fields started off as just a game between friends. Nerdy kids debating which mythic heroes would win if pitted against each other. Over the years, as things grew, this became a concept I fixated on, knowing the potential that it could have as a story. Now it's a living, breathing thing, and for it to succeed, I need you. So come check out our Indiegogo campaign and see what you can do to bring Elysian Fields issue 0 to print and beyond. Thank you.
All right, so it's different figures from mythology.
Yes.
Fighting each other.
Yes, it essentially takes place in a tournament in the underworld, where every single pantheon in global mythology has their own like god of death, and so that god of death has a champion of heroes from those respective cultures representing them in this championship tournament to become the next Lord of the Underworld.
Is Mr. T our? Ours?
No, so that is so the comic book starts off with the death of Achilles. And one of the last people that Achilles fought in the Trojan War was this king from Ethiopia, which is modern day Ethiopia, named Memnon. And so the guy that's there is Memnon, and you get to see, and you will see how that turns out for him. It doesn't turn out too great, but for Memnon at least. So like the whole thing starts off, and Achilles is in his like final battle. Wow. And you see the death of Achilles, and then he ends up in the underworld, and he's kind of in his own heaven. He's with Patroclus in a memory that is far separated from the war, and the whole point is that this memory, like every second in the memory lasts several human lifetimes, and so he's there enjoying this thing that he never got to in his life, and living this life of peace, and living and then all of a sudden he kind of gets this something starts calling to him, and now he's in the Ferry of the Dead with Charon, and he's going to an arena to fight.
Right there, Rob. That's where things go bad for Memnon. Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see. Am I going too slow? Should I be
and
slowing
that's Achilles.
faster?
That's Achilles.
Yeah, this is Achilles here, and like this is the preview of the book. So like you can, and you're all good to go. So yeah, that's pretty much what we've been doing, and it's a really exciting project. I really lucked out in my artist Marcelo, who does the pencils, inks, and colors for this book. And he's done a great job. And we have Luke Stone doing our lettering, and Luke's done a whole bunch of campaigns on his own, and he's had nothing but good things to say about the stuff I've sent him, which is really humbling. No nonsense kind of guy. So him giving us praise like that is really great. And he did an original art piece during one of our past interviews that was just awesome. And so we have that for sale as one of our perk tiers, and that will come with a signed copy of the book. And we had Jim O'Reilly do a pinup that goes with any deluxe tier of the book that will also be going to that Luke Stone original art tier as well.
Cool. So that's what I've got up here right now.
Yeah.
And then it looks like you have other tiers. It's like 2 copies signed, or
so the way that I have it broken down is that you have your single issue, which is just the standard physical issue of the book. And then you have single issue deluxe, which is signed, and you get the O'Reilly pinup. Then you have Double Trouble, which is you just get 2 copies of the book. And then Double Trouble Deluxe is you get 2 copies. One of them is signed as like this is your like collector piece to like put up, and the other one's your casual reading piece. And then you obviously get that O'Reilly pinup as well.
Cool.
And
$5 at least, the lowest tier.
Yeah, and then that's the digital money saver for like it. I initially didn't have a digital tier. Because I've done digital comics in the past, but like it's not the medium that most people prefer. And I know that holding a comic book in your hands is something important. And with this book in particular, every single copy that we're doing for this campaign is a collector's item. Mm-hmm. It'll have a cardstock foil cover. It has 24 pages of story, and then an art gallery of Marcelo's concept character art. And like it's going to be a really nice book. And so that was the whole thing that we were trying to do, is as much as this is a campaign to get started, it's also a thank you to the people who are willing to back us. And I am going to be putting out a floppy version, but even on that floppy, we're not going to be using the cover that we have on this. It'll be the Jim O'Reilly print. I got the permission from him, and that's going to be serving as our floppy cover. because I really, really want this version of the book that people backed and got us funded in the first place to be a very special thing for them. You know, Josh was talking about there aren't enough like first edition things anymore. And so that was the whole deal, is that I'm going to be ordering by demand on these main books. I'll order a few hundred extra just to have, so that we can continue to sell them if we hit the fully funded thing. And we also have a few stores interested in carrying the book.
Oh, great.
So like, again, we just really wanted this to be a big thank you to everyone that is coming and supported. And, you know, even the digital tier, you're not going to get the physical book, but you're going to get to read the book before anybody else. So like, I've done everything that I can to make sure that the customers feel like they are not only just getting a product, that they're being appreciated for coming and supporting our book.
Well, I know you had like a higher goal, and then you went back in and lowered it, and it looks like you're almost to that flexible goal.
Yeah.
With 6 days left. So
and
that's great.
It's plenty of time. I honestly do think that we could have probably hit the 10K. It would have been very close. But like, my big thing is that this is my first book, and you know, Rob pointed out earlier, I've never heard of you, and I just don't know. That's a very big hurdle to get over in this industry. And while in future campaigns, I think having goals like 10 to 20K are something that would be very reasonable, and things that I can get to if this product is received as well as I'm hoping it is. For my first campaign, it became like really clear within that first week or two. I was like, that was too high. And I am floored that we've gotten this far. I remember thinking like if we can hit 3K, I'll be happy. Like we'll have returned my investment, and I'll be making like 1,000 in profit. I'll be a very happy man.
Well, I think you want to set your goal to a point where you're comfortable with it, where you're going to be able to produce the book. But you know, you've raised like a really good amount of money. I mean, so congratulations to you. You know,
yeah, thank you. And you know, as I said, like we were going to get this book out no matter what. But it's nice to know that we are well into the green, and it's been a very humbling experience to see all these people come and back us. And for my first campaign, and completely coming out of nowhere to hit 165 backers, it's a big deal for me.
Well, so Michael, your friends would get together and you would discuss which mythological creatures or guys. Yours was always Achilles for the win. That's what.
Really, in all honesty, yeah. My big thing was, you know, my dad, as I mentioned, my dad was SF, and he deployed a lot. And whenever he came home, he would read me this beautifully illustrated version of the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Oh, yeah.
And so the Iliad was like my bedtime story growing up. It was my favorite. And there was like my favorite section of the Iliad was the book where Achilles comes back to the fight, and you see him do all this crazy shit, like fighting the Scamander River, you know, the fight with Hector, which honestly isn't even all that much of a fight. Like all of those things were like my favorite part of the book. And so Achilles was my favorite character growing up. You know, and he's always been a character that I've really enjoyed in those books. And it's honestly really cool getting to write him. And one of the things that I am hoping that comes forward is that I'm trying to make this version of the character a very authentic representation to who he was in the stories. Because you see things in like Hollywood with like Brad Pitt's version of Achilles in Troy, or the version of the version of Achilles in the Netflix Troy Fall of a City. And it's just like, there are bits and pieces of these characters that are done very well, but like they miss the mark. Like I think Brad Pitt's version of Achilles is too amicable. He's too likable.
Right.
Like Achilles spends 3/4 of the Iliad throwing a temper tantrum. The whole book is about his rage. He's a very angry, petulant person, and a lot of that comes from when he went to Troy he was between the ages of 13 and 16 years old. He's a child soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really affects his psyche when you're being told you're the best of the Greeks since you were 13. That's going to make you kind of arrogant. And
yeah. Getting dipped in the river Styx would probably mess you up a little bit.
that too, and that's actually something that I will end up playing with in future books. That element of his myth is something that really fun is going to be really fun to play with, because since he's dead, he's no longer invulnerable like that.
Yeah.
Well, I really love your passion for portraying him like faithfully. I think that's cool and interesting.
Well, and that was my whole thing, is when I reached out to my artist, was like, it is important that Achilles needs to look like he's in his early 20s, and he needs to have a runner's build. He can't be jacked like crazy. Like, he should be physically fit, but he should look like he could run in the Olympics. Because that's the whole thing, is that his big, outside of Best of the Greeks and Lord of the Warcry, his repeat moniker in the Iliad is the swift-footed.
Mm-hmm. I think you got it.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the first project. It's Eudaimonia. No?
Eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia, right? Did we get it wrong? We got it wrong again, right?
Got it wrong again.
I think it's just one of those words that everybody pronounces differently.
Eudaimonia.
So you've got 22 days left, and but it looks like you're past your goal.
Yep.
So that's great. Do you want to give us one final pitch for the project?
Okay, so Eudaimonia, this is the second part of a graphic miniseries. It is going to be 48 pages, maybe a little bit more if we can throw in some extra art. If you missed out on the first one because I foolishly ended the campaign early, it was like a logistical thing. I decided I wanted the first books to be numbered. So I was like, well, I sold the ones I need to sell, and so I shut down the campaign. I should have kept it in demand, but I didn't. If you want to jump in, you can get both issues. There is a 2-pack. It is $40. So between the two books, you're looking at close to 100 pages of gorgeous art. Mm-hmm. It's a story about war and philosophy and people, dealing with and managing trauma, whether it's comes from the battlefield or from living in the towns that are being kind of chewed up in the gears of war. It is a circular narrative with about a half dozen characters. There's mystery. There is mystery, romance, war, life, death. It's all in there. And this is the last. It's only going to be a 2-part story. So jump on in. It's told using. Oh yeah, I probably should have mentioned this before. So the entire story is told in verse. That was kind of a choice that it's kind of a creative choice that I made, because number one, I love old stories like that, like Beowulf and that's a lot of Shakespeare that are told in verse. But that kind of writing was also what a lot of the soldiers in the trenches were writing with. So a lot of the great poetry that comes out of World War I is in these kind of classic verse, like sonnets, iambic pentameter, and the entire story is told using either third-person verse narration or dialogue that maintains that strict iambic pentameter rhyming. And that's it's something I felt was appropriate given the subject matter, given these people in history who were real, who really experienced this, and how they expressed themselves creatively when they were writing about what they had gone through. And so I wanted to kind of maintain that, and it was. I just want to. You've never tried to write anything in meter before. It's just ridiculous. You basically have to program your brain to think in that kind of verse, so that what you're saying has a rhythm to it. It's like da 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 da. So it's like a march, and so it's another thing that's very fitting for the subject.
Well, I think what's really cool is it gives it that kind of like epicness, a timelessness, but also in the way that songs, or like stories are like like these Achilles stories are like passed down from generation to generation. It's that verse that helps cement it in our in our pathways, so that we can regurgitate it to like further future generations. So it's cool. It's cool to to pin it that way, if I may say.
Well, both of these stories done with a strict to historical accuracy.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
You already had me super excited to get my copy, but now I'm like, dude, I might end up getting 2 of that 2-pack perk tier, because I know my dad would have a field day with this too.
I think the art and the color, like the colors on this, that I just thought, I love this so much. So, it's really outstanding work.
This is a project that I am very excited to back and get my hands on my copy.
So yeah, just congratulations on getting the first one out too. I know like successfully completing a campaign is like is a big deal. So like, congratulations to you. I'm happy to have you on for this, and hopefully get you some more buys. And then Michael, we'll give you like one last pitch real quick before we wrap up the show. How's that sound?
That sounds like a plan.
Okay.
So what I'll just do is I'll do my elevator pitch and then talk a little bit about it. So fate shackled Achilles in life. In death, he was finally free until a mysterious calling took him from his peace, and he is forced to fight as a champion for Hades in a tournament that crowns the ruler of the underworld every 1,000 years. Elysian Fields is a story that deals a lot with coming to terms with the person that you want to be versus the person that you've been your entire life. Achilles' main arc in this is all about he wants to have a chance at a new life, and he has that as a potential thing in his grasp. But when fighting in this tournament and fighting against all these people from across different mythologies and really getting to push his abilities to his max, the old hound of glory starts to turn its ugly head, and it becomes a conflict within. And we've got a very outside of that, it's also just a really fun tournament book, and you're going to see really cool fights between all sorts of different mythical heroes.
Cool, man. Cool. Very cool.
Really.
What
I love about both of these comic books today is they both look gorgeous, but the story, I think, on both of these is so strong. That's my feeling.
That's right.
And there's no adequate substitute for story. That's what Josh.
Anton, you could either shoot these gentlemen one more question of your own, or we could close it out. It's
well, if they want to talk about, we talked about some inspirations, but what are some things? Who are some comic book characters? What are some things that you don't like? So when you did this comic book, you wanted to make sure it wasn't like X.
I actually have a good one for that. So as I mentioned, I wanted to make Achilles as authentic as possible. One of the big things that you run into with Achilles is the dynamic between him and Patroclus. And when you read the Homeric books, the subtext is very clear that they are lovers. But one of the big things that I really wanted to avoid was making the book feel like an agenda piece. And that is something that I'm very adamant about, because even though these characters by a modern narrative would be considered LGBTQ, if you were talking to Achilles and Patroclus about it, they would be confused by the very concept of it. You cannot look at a narrative like this and solely judge it based off of the scope of your modern understanding. You have to take these characters within the context of which they are written. And the fact of the matter is that Achilles and Patroclus, they were lovers, but they wouldn't identify as any sort of sexuality or anything, because that's a concept that they predated. People just slept with who they slept with back then. And when you read the Iliad,
like the 70s.
When you read the Iliad, you find out that Patroclus was going to petition that Achilles be allowed to marry Briseis if they returned home. So like this is very clear, like as much as this is an important part to Achilles' story, and as much as him and Patroclus are what they are, I don't want this to be shoved down anyone's throats. And so there is a scene where they do have their reunion, and it is I hope that it comes off as very tender and everything, but I also hope that people don't feel like I'm just going, here, you need to like this. And that's something that I feel is done in a lot of modern mainstream books. And it's what has caused a lot of this alienation, and is honestly one of the big things that caused the Comicsgate movement in the first place, is the pushing of a narrative out of a political nature, rather than creating a organic narrative that suits a story.
Anton, they made Iceman gay. They made Iceman, you know, Bobby Drake, Iceman from Spider-Man. That's his Amazing Friends. They made him gay. They made him gay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they made the past version of him gay, and it was weird. And then now he's just all gay, and I there's a reason why I kind of cut off my X-Men after a bit. Like, I read a few books, but I don't.
They kind of made him bitchy gay. He's sort of like bitchy gay.
But point is that
chill out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it wasn't even
like, shut up, Dad.
Gay. That was his personality.
What I was trying to make though is
that is.
I don't want a narrative to be pushed down somebody's throat, and that's something that was a very big part of how I wrote my book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. What is that?
If anybody is like scratching their head, my son is here.
Oh, okay.
He's blowing raspberries to entertain himself. So
I'm like a wild cat. Hey, Josh, do you want to field? It's sort of like the question is, what in comics books don't you like, right? Or what characters?
Yeah, what's your least favorite character? It's just kind of everybody always asks.
You know what I just read recently? I read A History of Violence.
Oh yeah,
right. Like, and I've heard this book talked up for so long. I never got around to reading it, and I finally read it recently, and it was like the opposite of a story. It was just, and it was one of those books that I can't understand why so many people got into it. It was a story in which it was like, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this, and it was like, it had no meaning, it had no tone, it had no pacing. It was just like one of the worst stories I think I've ever read, particularly in a comic book.
Well, that was the one that was adapted into the Viggo Mortensen movie. Is that correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I can't.
I know that story. Yeah, I understand. I haven't read it. I've seen the movie.
Yeah. So,
Anton, have you seen the movie?
No.
Viggo's hot in it.
Viggo Mortensen.
Well, I mean, he's hot in everything. So
he's Iceman.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. All right. Fair. I mean, fair enough.
I'm more of a story guy than a character guy. You know, like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but like, I'm more interested in telling a good story than, I don't know. I just focus on story more than characters.
I thought that story was very it was very primally brutal. It was like reductionist of like humanity into like primal brutality and kind of vengeance, sexual. You know,
I mean, as somebody who
violence.
I grew up on the East Coast, so like, okay, I'm not saying that I'm a mobster, but like, I know a little bit. I know enough about it that part of the story just seemed totally ridiculous to me. Like, a mobster would never kidnap somebody and torture them for 20 years. That would never ever happen.
Right.
Like, that's like something you would see on like Live Leak. Like, that just doesn't. So yeah, that part of it just pulled me right out of it. It's like, if a mobster were to do that, that would put the entire operation in jeopardy. And that's not how that works.
It shattered your suspense.
You don't have to grow up on the East Coast to work that one
out. But on the other side, because I generally like to focus on more positive than negative things. Just for me personally, I recently reread some of the Max recently, and I think that's one of the most criminally underrated books ever written. Like, it's just, and I'll tell you how, like, to work it into my story, like, the Max is a story of people working out their problems. Like, that's basically what it is. Mm-hmm. But the presentation is it shows you all of this absurdity and surrealness and the outback, and so you're not really sure how real any of that is. And so for my story, like I'm basically copying that template over, because you're seeing people working out their issues and trauma from the war, but it looks, like this. Like that's what it looks like. And so it's a visual representation of just.
I got to meet Sam Keith at the convention a couple years ago, and he signed my Batman Max crossover. So I was just really.
I have a really bad tattoo, but I do have the Max on me.
It was like I used to love his art because he was like probably my favorite artist as a kid.
Yeah,
he's fighting Brock Sampson.
Because like his Ghost Rider in the Marvel Comics Presents and his Wolverine, I love that. I love that shit. Anyway,
the Max is such a great suit, and it's funny that gets brought up because like I was on a panel with I'm blanking on his name, but he has a campaign for a book called Loco Hero, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's just a very interesting concept of this person that has just like a vet that has PTSD and dissociative disorder, and so she thinks that she's fighting superheroes and she's just supervillains, and so but she's just like she's just stopping like robberies and stuff, and like from like common people, and so like she thinks she's fighting like samurais and ninjas and everything. Like that sounds a lot like the Max, where like you have this person that's just off their rocker." And the concept of reality is very twisted in the narrative. And I was like, I mean, I'm down because I love the Max. And my first exposure of it was the MTV cartoon, which was great. And then, I went and I read the books, and you can't really go wrong there.
It's like a cool version of the superhero psyche.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, it's been really fun having you guys on. I think we gotta wrap it up so that
this was awesome.
I can hit that water. Get that water.
Great project.
Kayak is calling to me.
We get it. You're somewhere very nice.
No, that's not why I'm saying it. I'm saying it because I legitimately want to go kayaking.
No, that's fair. I don't blame you. I just live in a city area, so I don't get that option.
I escaped my city area apartment a few months ago, and I won't be able to go back for quite some time.
No, fair enough.
Sadly. Anton, you want to? Well, like I said, why don't you close us out like usual?
That sounds great. Great show today. Hey, check your pulse now. Did I lie? It's beating faster. Great guest, Joshua Plack. Thank you so much for telling us all about Eudaimonia #2. Looks like a great series. Put them together. Michael Odin, Elysian Fields. 2 great stories today. Beautiful comic books, and we really appreciate it for both of you. Always thanks to you, the audience. And on behalf of Rob Cacy, I'm Anton Belvedere. We always ask, who has more fun than we do? Nobody. We'll see you next time on the Splendopia Hour live.